Hey, campfire crew, let's get it on. Home Alone Break-In by Entire Ad. This happened a couple of years ago, and even now I still think about it sometimes. It started slowly, just weird stuff happening around our house, but it built up into one of the scariest moments I've ever had. We live in a 3-story home, and my family tends to stay up late. One night, around 3 a.m., my Uncle Alex stepped outside to throw out the trash. Nothing unusual, it was a regular thing. But later, he told us that as soon as he got out there, he felt this strong sense of being watched. And he looked around and saw my mom's van parked in the driveway, and the darkness around it, he said, was thick, and he swore he saw someone sitting inside. The windows were tinted, so he couldn't make it out clearly, but the feeling was strong enough that it stayed with him. Around that same time, my mom started noticing weird stuff with her car. Things moved around, random items missing, and one day she found a beer bottle inside it. She knew it didn't belong to any of us. She used to leave her car unlocked because we all trusted the neighborhood, but after that, she started locking it every time. I sleep on the 3rd floor, and my window faces the front of the house. At night, I started hearing sounds, light footsteps and a distinct clinking from outside. We have cement stairs leading up to our front porch, but a few of the steps are loose, so when someone steps on them, they make a loud, specific sound. You can't really mistake it. At first, I assumed it was my other Uncle Mario, who's younger and goes out to party or club almost every night. He comes home at all hours, so late-night noise wasn't weird. But something about these sounds felt different. Slower, almost like whoever it was trying not to be heard. And that's what started to bother me. One night, after watching a scary movie, I didn't want to sleep alone, so I made a little spot on the floor in my grandma's room. She had a security monitor with a feed showing our driveway, and I glanced at it while trying to fall asleep. I saw something that made my stomach drop. A tall man was standing at the edge of the camera's view, just standing there, still, not moving. I blinked a few times thinking maybe I was imagining it, but he didn't go away. I grabbed my phone and messaged our family group chat to ask if anyone had just gotten home because sometimes people do come in late, but everyone responded saying they were either already inside or still out. I looked back at the monitor. The guy was gone. That moment stuck with me, but nothing else happened right away. And then came the day I'll never forget. It was about a month later, and I'd stayed home from school, and I was the only one in the house. Everyone else was at work or in class, and it was a quiet afternoon around 2 p.m. I was just laying in bed scrolling TikTok when I heard a man's voice and the faint hum of a small engine. I looked out my window and saw a golf cart parked in our driveway with a man in a blue shirt standing next to it. He didn't look especially threatening, but there was something about him that felt off. None of our family cars were home, and no one was supposed to be visiting. I tried calling my mom. She worked at a hospital and she didn't answer. So I called my stepdad and asked if someone was supposed to be coming by, and he said no. I told him what I saw, and his voice got serious. He told me to keep watching and to let him know if anything changed. Not long after, my mom called back. The moment I explained things to her, she said, "Call the police right now." So I did. I called 911 and told them everything. The dispatcher told me to hide, but before I did, I had this terrible feeling. I wasn't sure if anyone had locked the doors before leaving that morning. I ran downstairs. The front door was locked, but when I got to the back door, it was wide open. My heart dropped. I slammed it shut and locked it as fast as I could, but almost immediately I heard it, the doorknob rattling hard. Someone was trying to get in. I looked back, and I saw him. He was shirtless, tall, and definitely not the same man I had seen in the driveway. He looked skinnier and just off, like something wasn't right with him. He was yanking the handle like he had just missed getting in, and I honestly felt like he knew I had just locked it. I turned and sprinted up the stairs and locked myself in my parents' room and stayed on the line with the 911 dispatcher the whole time. I was shaking so hard I could barely speak, and every second felt like forever. The police arrived a few minutes later and searched the house and property, but there was no one there. No man in a blue shirt, no shirtless guy, no signs of a break-in. Nothing. They reviewed the security footage we had, but it didn't show anything helpful. The man in the driveway had stayed far enough from the camera's center, and the back angle was too dark to catch anything clearly. Just weird movement on the edges. It was like whoever they were knew exactly where not to be seen. To this day, I still don't know who they were. Were they working together? Was one watching while the other tried to get in? Or was it two separate people who, by some terrifying coincidence, both ended up at our house at the same time? I try not to think about it too much, but sometimes I do. What if I hadn't locked that back door in time? Just a few weeks ago, I went back to visit the neighborhood. I looked down the street and saw a golf cart. Same sound, same shape, same look. I didn't wait around to see who was driving it. My Abusive Ex Haunted and Cursed Me by Dullberry. So, about 6 months ago, I got out of an abusive relationship. Trigger warning for domestic violence. For context, I'm a 22-year-old female, and I was dating a girl the same age as me. We got together when we were both 20, and I was instantly enamored by her. I was so drawn to her, and the more I learned about her, the more attracted to her I was. Our relationship was great at first, laughing together for hours, going on many adventures together, becoming best friends first, until it all went to shit. My ex was really big into spirituality and astrology and all of that, so it was something we talked about a lot before we started anything romantic. And we had a very creepy experience together while randonauting, which is a whole other story in and of itself that I can't even begin to explain. She eventually told me that she was a practicing witch and had been since high school. Honestly, I thought it was kind of cool, and I wasn't really sure what I believed in at the time. But I knew I had just experienced something out of the ordinary that I couldn't explain. So as the months went on, my ex and I grew closer, and she began divulging more about this side of herself to me. She told me that she prayed to Lilith, Satan's mistress, because she was a strong woman figure and represented dark and repressed femininity. At the time, I really thought nothing of it. I thought she was just like being a feminist, you know? Honestly, I didn't like the idea of religion because of the corruption of it all historically, and even presently. So I hope you understand that these blaring red flags weren't so loud to me. After a while, our relationship started to turn sour. Our arguments got more and more volatile, and eventually it led her to putting her hands on me. The first time it happened, she looked into my eyes and smiled at me while she did it. It was the most disturbing, terrifying smile I've ever seen in my life. It wasn't anything like that Smile movie. It was like a side smirk, almost like, I finally have the chance to do this. Like she'd been waiting, like she was excited. It was safe to say I was terrified and confused. At the time, I knew my ex had a temper, but I didn't know she was capable of putting her hands on me, especially not to the extent that she did. She didn't just put her hands on me, she dragged me through the house, beat me in every room, banged my head against walls and glass doors, and left me bloody and bruised. I tried to leave, but she refused to give me my phone or keys, so I had to say fuck it and made a run for it to the nearest 7-Eleven where I called the police. They took one look at my injuries and heard my story and took me back to my house and arrested her. I watched her get dragged away in handcuffs, screaming and crying that she loved me and was sorry and just wanted to talk to me. I was gutted. Unfortunately, that's not the end of our story. I picked her up from jail that day and she told me there was a restraining order in place and that we weren't allowed to see each other. I was devastated, and it seemed that she was too. She expressed that she wanted things to work with us, and she wanted to make it work no matter what she had to do. We talked about it and came to the conclusion that the only way to continue was if I got the charges dropped, because she couldn't be with me if she had assault charges on her name because of what she did. Again, I see how big of a red flag this is now, but I was so entangled in the manipulation, I didn't see it before. I did everything I could to get the charges dropped. I told the police I lied. I paid for her lawyer, all while she wasn't working, and she never really had a real job our entire relationship, by the way. But, to nobody's surprise, the hitting didn't stop that day. It only got worse and more frequent. But I wasn't going to risk calling the police again because I knew what happened last time and how mad she got when she saw the discovery and watched the body cam footage of me telling the police what had happened. So I endured it. Months of living in complete hell. She would physically restrain me, spit on me, not let me leave, threaten to rape me, push her knees into my abdomen, and mind you, I'm 5'2" on a good day and she was 5'8" and pretty significantly bigger than me. She threatened to kill me constantly. She verbally abused me severely, and honestly, I thought I deserved all of it. Not only did the beatings get worse, but the worse they got, the more she enjoyed them. One time in particular, I started to have an asthma attack during the beating, and she just sat back and smiled at me, waiting for me to die. And then she suddenly panicked and called 911, freaking out on the phone with them, crying. And that didn't happen just once either. She would lock me out of the house, lock me in the house, stand behind the car if I ever tried to drive away. She'd chase me down the street and beat me outdoors, in public, in our neighborhood if I tried to run. I was in hell, and the more it happened, the less human she became. I came to terms with my fate. I was terrified, but I didn't know how to leave. And I knew I was going to end up dead. Until one day, we had a fight, and she ended up manipulating me into saying I wanted to die, after telling me numerous times for months that I would be better off dead, and everyone else would be too, and she had me admitted into a psychiatric unit. I was livid at first. I thought she deserved to be locked up in there, not me. But I didn't know that this would end up saving my life. Being away for a week and being surrounded by people who saw me, who told me I wasn't worthless and that I was actually pretty cool, gave me the strength to leave. It was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, and she continued to harass me for weeks after I ceased communication and refused to leave my house and completely destroyed it before she did, and she took a lot of my belongings. But at least I got out with my life intact. Over the next few months, I got a restraining order against her, but the terror never faded. I still felt her presence. I felt her haunting me, whispering in my ear. It felt like she was still there. And then I remembered what she told me. If we ever break up, I'm cursing the fuck out of you and your family, your mother, your brother, your sister, your uncle, your dog, and your uncle's dog. And then the things that had been happening around the house began to make sense. 2 weeks after we'd broken up, I was sitting in the house with my friends after she had left, and the second someone called her evil, the joint I was hitting completely burst into flames. There was no lighter in sight. I was just hitting that bitch. And this wasn't the only thing that happened. Shit would fly off the shelves when we talked about her, and other stuff. And I was terrified, beyond scared. So I started asking around, talking to people I knew that knew about this shit, until I found someone that could help. And that person told me everything. She basically explained back our entire relationship, how she wanted me to think that her hitting me was my fault, and that my sadness gave her more power, and that's how she was such a powerful witch already. She was using me to become more powerful. She'd really been enjoying it, and not only that, she had placed dozens of curses on me and my family, and she started when we were still together. I don't want to detail what the curses were, because I'm not really sure how that shit works, and I don't want to manifest it anymore, so I won't. But I will say, she wanted me dead. The person I spoke to said she would help me, and in the days after, I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. The air felt more fresh. I felt like I could breathe again. I felt lighter, happier, and safer. As much as I now feel protected spiritually, her memory still haunts me. Not only that, but I'm now haunted with the knowledge that she is doing the same thing to some other girl in some other state, and it's only getting worse because the more curses she places, which she's still actively doing, the more she loses her soul. She is sacrificing her soul, her humanity, to place these curses, to feel more powerful, to not feel pain anymore, and I honestly feel sorry for her. But more than anything, I feel sorry for the girl who is currently being tortured at the hands of this evil. I hope more than anything she is okay. I pray for her now, and I hope she survives and has the courage and strength to do what I couldn't and stop my ex. There's so many more chilling details, but there are some things I'm just not ready to talk about, and some things I don't want to put into the universe any more than they already are. So I really hope you can all still understand how truly terrifying this was, and still is, without the complete story. It's also my first time telling this, so I really hope it made sense. If you've gotten this far, thank you for hearing my story, and as a reminder to everyone that's struggling right now, it really does get better, and I'm so happy you're still here. Sketchy Ice Cream Truck by Fred C. Dobbs. Something reminded me of this the other day, and while thinking about it, I thought it might warrant sharing. Many years ago, I want to say around 1997 or 98, some friends and I went to visit a guy we knew who sold us weed. We knew him well enough and were friendly enough that we'd usually stay, smoke up, and have a few beers and shoot the breeze when we went to his house. It was a weekday night in early summer, so we were all standing around in his backyard talking. He lived in a particular subdivision here in town where a lot of the houses in the neighborhood had alleys behind them. Anyway, it was probably between midnight and 12:30, and as we stood there talking, we started to hear this faint music off in the distance. We didn't think anything of it at first, and we just kept talking. Then we noticed it getting louder, and I could identify the melody. It was Tthese by Beethoven, and it sounded even closer. Once it got close enough, I could clearly tell it was coming from an ice cream truck. And sure enough, down the alley behind this guy's house came rolling an ice cream truck, maybe going like 10 miles per hour. The alleys are badly lit in that area, so we never got a clear view of the driver. After it drove on through, we all looked at each other and were like, what the hell is an ice cream man doing driving out after midnight with his truck music on? Going down an alley, no less. It was surreal enough, and us being stoned made it even more so. A few minutes later, we heard the music again, and then it got louder again, and the truck rolled back down the alley going in the opposite direction. Not like I was in fear for my life or anything, but just the weird spectacle of that. The incongruity of it made us all feel uneasy. And again, I'm sure the weed didn't help that either. I still wonder what that driver was doing to this day. Worst Sleepover of My Life by JJ. I'm 18 now. This happened when I was 11 years old, back in 6th grade. It was a holiday, so I didn't have school the next day. My friends had this group chat, so we didn't have to text each person individually if we wanted to hang out. My friends John, David, and Tucker agreed to have a sleepover at John's house. John's parents were loaded, and they had a 3-story house with a pool, a basement with a huge TV, an arcade machine, and a bar. John asked me if I wanted to come over, and I obviously agreed. I got there around 5 p.m., and we all went to this fort John had built in the woods. All right, enough of the unnecessary details. I'll skip to the important part. All 4 of us were messing around in this fort when we heard footsteps on the leaves below us. At first, it was just me and Tucker that heard it, but we told John and David to listen. They heard it too. John told his dad about it over the phone, and he came out there, cleared the woods, and then walked us back to the house. It wasn't until a few hours later that we were playing Fortnite or something on John's console when we got the idea to explore the woods, because apparently someone told John that there was some huge, sketchy cabin back there. Stupidly, all 4 of us agreed to go with flashlights. About 10 minutes later, we got to the cabin, and it wasn't as big as I had had in mind, but immediately I noticed a horrible smell coming from inside, like something died in there. We found a broken window and entered. We split into 2s and explored the cabin, and me and Tucker explored one side while John and David explored the other. We found this small room that had an attic door in the ceiling. We didn't find anything weird in the room, just a bed and some furniture. But when me and Tucker were in the attic, we heard John suddenly scream from the other room. Tucker and I ran out from the attic and followed John and David, who were running back to his house. I couldn't get an answer out of John until we got back at his basement, when he said he saw a man, probably mid-40s, tall and skinny, lunge at them. We were all shaken up by what he said, and John also told us that he was sure he saw another person lying down in a pool of blood in there. We all tried to get over it, but David wanted to call the police to check out the cabin. We told John's dad about it, and he had a concerned look on his face. He also was mad at us for going into the woods, but he did call the police eventually. 20 minutes later, like 10 state troopers and a search team came and went into that cabin. What they told us they found made my blood run cold. Apparently, there was a serial killer in that cabin, and when they found him, they found a corpse right beside him. They put him into cuffs, and when they went into the closet of the room that we had been in, they found 3 other bodies. The victims were identified, but I never got their names. The scariest part is that me and Tucker were just feet away from 3 dead bodies. All 4 of the poor victims had been stabbed by a foot-long knife they later recovered. This happened 7 years ago today. 7 years ago was the scariest day of my life. Date with a Psychopath by Crystal Lover. So, when I was around 20, I'm a female, I was newly single and exploring the apps. I matched with this guy named Alex. He wasn't my usual type, but his profile seemed cool. Showed he was in school, had a car and a job, plus friends, so he didn't seem weird to me at all. We got to talking, and he seemed pretty into it. And he seemed pretty into me, so we set up a date. He came to pick me up for a driving date, so basically sitting in his car for hours driving around. Yeah, I don't know why I did that, but I blame it on being young and dumb. So he started driving. We drove for about 40 minutes all the way downtown. Now mind you, during those 40 minutes he was blasting music at full volume with the windows down. Everyone on the sidewalk was staring at us while he was screaming the lyrics out the window. When I brought up that I thought it was a little loud, he said, "Nah, everyone loves it." They in fact did not love it, I can assure you. Anyway, we got to the heart of downtown and he parked outside a very famous and prominent tower in the city and got down on the ground and just stared at it. No warning or nothing. This is when I started to think he was a little strange. He then hopped up and said, "Let's go get some food." Everything was very strange. We then began driving to get food, and he drove 2 cities outside of the one we were in. essentially, we'd been driving for hours by that time. While on this portion of the drive, he started spewing racist bullshit, and then abruptly told me that he was a very depressed and troubled person, and asked if I had ever done the slicey-dicey to my wrists. At that, I was very taken aback, and I really didn't know what to say. I'd known this guy for a few hours, and at that point, I didn't think the conversation would get that deep. He confided in me and told me that he had been hospitalized before SH. At that point, the vibe he was giving off was scary, and I started to feel in danger. But I was even more scared that if I offended him or something bad would happen. Let's not forget, I was in his car. He had my home address, and I was 2 cities away from mine. So I played nice. We finally got to a food spot and ate some dinner, and at least he paid, right? But anyway, that's when it started to get really creepy. We began driving again back to our city, but he kept taking the long way, so our 1-hour drive turned more into a 3-hour drive. At that point, we were back in the city, but it was really late, around 11:30. That's when he went into a dark neighborhood and he started driving very fast around tight roads and corners. As he was doing that, I asked him to slow down because he was scaring me, and he turned and looked at me with no emotion and said, I've had some really hard days in my life. And I said, I know, you told me. I'm so sorry. And then he said, I used to hurt so bad that I would come and drive my car just like this and kill squirrels so something else could hurt as much as I did. I was in shock. I was honestly very terrified with what he said, and not to mention his strangeness from the start. All I could do was ask if he still did it, and he said no, not anymore. I knew that wasn't true, but I thought if I offended him, he could easily overpower me, so play it nice again. At that point, we were very close to my home, about 10 minutes. He abruptly asked me then if I'd been to this park that was coming up. The park was at the bottom of a cliff, and now it was the middle of the night. I had been to that park, but even if I hadn't, I would have said yes, because there was no way I wanted that man to drive me down there. He then said, "Oh, perfect. I haven't. Can you show me around?" And then he took a right and drove down the very dark road to the bottom of the park. The parking lot was completely empty, with about 6 streetlights total. Needless to say, I thought I would be victim number 1. Since I'm here, I obviously wasn't, but his tone and mannerisms were so strange while we were there. He basically forced me to kiss him pretty intimately and got handsy while I kept pushing him off. It didn't escalate past that, and then he drove me home. I blocked his number and all his socials after that, but I often wonder if I really did go on a date with a true psychopath. Hey gang, thanks for listening to this episode. If you've got a true scary story of any nature that you'd like me to narrate, email it to unclejosh.truescarystories@gmail.com. I read them all. If you're catching this on YouTube and you like what you heard, give the video a thumbs up. Hit the notification bell for every time that I upload, and if you're not a subscriber, why not become one? Leave a comment below. I'd love to know what you thought of the stories, and maybe even tell a friend about the channel. I would appreciate it. If you'd like to take your support of what I'm doing a step further, find a link to my Patreon page in the description, and consider getting some Uncle Josh and Campfire Crew merchandise. A link to my TeePublic storefront is in the description too. Everyone, be excellent to each other. And until next time, be wary of things that go bump in the night. It could be anything. A ghost, a monster, or the guy next door.